Hi, my name is Sage Vincent, and I'm the Adopting Parent Coordinator on our Snowflake's Embryo Adoption team. Today, I have the privilege of presenting to you about how to create your embryo adoption family profile. If you're a placing family, this video can still be helpful for you, so stay tuned. Here's a brief overview of what we'll be talking about today. First, we'll talk about what is a family profile and why it matters. We'll talk about how to make one, what do you include, and we'll end with some pro tips. An embryo adoption family profile provides a snapshot of who you are, what is important to you, what you stand for, and a description of your personal journey in choosing embryo adoption. This is essentially like an online scrapbook or life book, just giving an overview of what your life is like. What do you like to do? Where do you like to go? Who's your community? What brought you to embryo adoption? These are some things to think about as you write your family profile. Now you may be thinking, we already did a home study. Why do we need to do this too? Well, a home study is a discussion between you and an agency, which means that the information you share is confidential. It's how that we on our Snowflakes team make sure that you're ready to adopt. But potential placing families don't read your home study evaluation. That is entirely private. So you get to write a family profile that's a presentation of who you are for the placing families to get to know you better. And placing parents will write a family profile for you to get to know them too. It can be a really difficult and emotional decision deciding to place your embryos for adoption, and choosing a family can be really difficult for some of our placing families. So making sure that your family profile is of good quality and accurate of who you are is really important, because it's all that placing families have to go on before they decide to choose you to adopt their embryos. It's not like you get to have a phone call or meet up in person first. So this is what a family profile does. It takes the place of meeting one another. You're going to want to choose a format. Some options include Word, PowerPoint, or Canva. You can see these options on the side of Jerry and Susan. The one on the top, they used Word, and the one on the bottom, they used PowerPoint. Feel free to choose one of those platforms, or Canva if you're familiar with that. I would encourage you to choose a preset template or theme. If you're already creative, great. It'll just make the process easier and you can customize it to your heart's content. And if you're not so creative, then choosing a template can really help you out. I still want to encourage you to customize the template along the way. And you can see how here Jerry and Susan, they chose a blue template, and the picture of themselves that they chose had some blue in it to highlight it. I thought that was a nice touch. You're going to want to submit your family profile to us as a PDF. This is really important. If you are unsure about how to convert your family profile into a PDF, just ask your adopting parent coordinator and she'll be able to help you out. So what do you include and what do you not include? One, let your personality shine through. Be yourself. I can't say this enough. Are you funny? Athletic? Maybe you're into music. Maybe you collect comic books on the side. Whatever it may be, you want to showcase those things. Let your personality guide how you write the profile. Share a little bit about your personality in the sense of, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Do you prefer to stay home on the weekends? Do you like to go out? Talk about those things. And if you're married, talk about how you met each other and how you relate as a couple. How do you go about making major life decisions together? Have you overcome any challenges? Talk about that. And lastly, and almost most importantly, talk about who you are, not who you want to be. Placing families can tell if you're being genuine in your profile. Here's an example outline to follow as you write your profile. You're going to want to almost word it like a letter. You'll start with, dear placing family, thank you for considering us. Sometimes it's easy to leave out the thanks, but we don't want to do that. Placing families are taking a risk in choosing you to adopt their embryos, and you want to thank them for giving you that opportunity. After you do that, you want to introduce yourself. This would be a great place to talk about your infertility story if you have one, or maybe you just have a heart for embryo adoption. Talk about that. What spurred your interest? You can talk about your hopes for your family in the long term. How many kids are you hoping to have? What are some things you want to do together as a family? If you already have children, talk about that. And you'll include some things about your pets too if you have them. Now you're going to want to talk about your chosen autobiographical information. So this is just those details about you, your personality, the things you like, some of those things we talked about on the last slide. And we'll talk more about some things to include on the next slide. You want to include how you feel about carrying multiples. We know in embryo adoption, twins are much more common. How do you feel about that? Are you open to that? Maybe you're planning on only transferring one embryo at a time. That's totally great. Let us know. And lastly, please include your thoughts on communications with your placing family. This one can be easy to overlook because you've already probably communicated about your communication preferences with your home study provider or your placing parent coordinator, but you want to include it in your profile so that placing families can read from your own words what you are hoping for. This will help us match you better because we will try to match families that have similar communication preferences. And it's a really great way to connect with families through reading each other's profiles and noticing, hey, we have similar ideas about communication. And then you just want to end with a brief closing. Thank you for reading this. Thank you for considering us. We're excited about this possibility. Something like that. Personally, I recommend that you include your thoughts about communication preferences right at the end before your closing. If you don't prefer that method, you can also put it at the beginning. Now we're going to dive into that autobiography portion that I mentioned before. Here's a list of some things to include. And yes, include all of them. It can look long, but it's really not when you start thinking about it. Include your physical descriptions. Are you tall, short, blonde, brunette, blue eyes, green eyes? Tell us. You can even share some of your family's origins, what countries they came from, how long have they been in the United States, things like that. If you're married, talk about how you met. Was it in college? Was it recently on a dating app? People love knowing those things. And if you're single, you can talk about your journey of singleness. Do you have any children in the family? Talk about that. And maybe your pets or your kids so far. Include some pictures. You'll want to make sure to include your spiritual and religious affiliations. This, after communication preferences, is probably one of the biggest things we consider when matching families. We want to make sure that all families are comfortable with each other's religions, or lack thereof. So talk about your beliefs. Do you go to church every week? Tell us that. Maybe you're not so into religion. Let us know. You're going to want to also include some hobbies, interests, sports, things like that. This would be the place to talk about your growing comic book collection, or how you love to play board games on Friday nights, or go hiking on the weekends, or maybe every summer you take a trip to the Grand Canyon. I don't know, whatever it is that's unique about you, talk about that. We find that our placing families often connect with adopting families over those small little details that might not even cross your mind. But those are the details that make your family profile unique to you. Don't forget to describe your support system. If your family's comfortable with it, it's great to include pictures of grandparents, aunts, uncles, people like that in your community. Maybe you don't have a large family. That's totally fine. Share about your friendships. Are you connected with a small group at church? Include a picture. Are you connected with some of your neighbors? Share a few stories about that. Make sure to include a portion about your employment. Some families really enjoy this, and others it can be a little awkward, but just a few sentences or two talking about what you do and how you came to that profession. It helps our placing families get to know you better. Childcare plans. This is sometimes the most forgotten part of the family profile. We need to know how you plan to take care of your children. And it doesn't have to be set in stone. It can change. But our placing families want to know that you're thinking about it, that you have a plan, especially if you haven't had kids before. This is really important. It provides security to our placing families that you are prepared. This includes thoughts about early education. Do you plan to homeschool? Do you plan to put your kids in private school? Or maybe there's a great public school. Share a sentence or two about that. If you know what school they'll probably go to, you can even include a picture. And lastly, you want to describe your home, your neighborhood, your schools, like I mentioned. This is a really cool way to get a little bit more personal. Describe your neighborhood. Are there a lot of kids on the street? Is it mostly an older community? Do you have a big backyard? Do you live in an apartment? Whatever it may be, this is really a unique opportunity to give placing families an insight into your daily life. Photographs, everyone wants to see them. Include a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 16. I love this picture here on the slide because it's a family photo. Yes, they're posing, but it's not staged. You can see they're squinting in the sun. We love family photos like this, or even just pictures like this of friends and community. And it's a great example of a posed picture, but it's still fun and candid. Make sure that your photos are clear. We don't want blurry pictures or warped ones. I've noticed that some of our families have a lot of selfies. A couple selfies is okay, but you don't want all of your pictures to be selfies. If you're finding that most of the pictures you have of yourself or you and your spouse are selfies, maybe just grab a few friends, go for a walk, and just ask them to snap a few pictures of you. It's great to see some shots of you out and about and having fun doing things that allow us to see a little more than a selfie does. It's a great idea to include pictures of your home or yard. I do want to make note here, please do not include any identifying information like your street name or zip code. We want to keep that private. That being said, placing families love being able to visualize where the kids are going to grow up. Do you have a nursery ready? Great, include a picture of it. If not, that's fine. Do you have a backyard? Show us. Things like that. It doesn't have to be super personal, but just a glimpse of what the children will be growing up in is really comforting. Make sure to include pictures of your pets if you have any, and extended family. Let's talk about what not to include. This can almost be harder than what to include. Be careful not to include all of your biggest and brightest accomplishments. Be honest and selective about your successes in life. Sometimes sharing too much about what you've accomplished can come off the wrong way. Even though you mean it in a great way, it might not come off that way on the other end. So pick and choose your favorite accomplishments and talk about those. And on the other side of the coin, be careful not to only talk about failure and struggle. You might have come from a really long road of infertility. Share about that. And also be mindful that our placing parents want to know that you have hope for the future. So it can be a tough balance to strike, but we know it's possible. And if you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. And lastly, please do not include any inappropriate jokes or photos. Enough said about that. There are 5 tips for success, and I believe that if you follow these 5 tips, you'll have a great family profile. The first one, do you want to enter matching faster? Just get started. The hardest part is starting. Sitting down to a blank screen is always the worst. So just start writing. If you're having a hard time getting started, just don't even look at that list that I gave you at the beginning of this. Just start writing about yourself, what you like to do, a little bit about your growing up. Just get going, and then you can go back and make sure that you've included all of the important information. If you're married, work together on writing it. One thing that we found that placing families really like is when spouses write a paragraph describing each other. So maybe Jerry, who we met earlier in our presentation, writes a page about Susan and how they met and what he likes about her. And Susan can do the same for Jerry. And it's often easier to write about someone else than yourself. Third tip is to use proper spelling and grammar. Spell check is great. Don't forget to use it. It'll catch some of those small little details that maybe you've missed since you're the one writing it. Quick note here, embryos does not have an apostrophe. It's something that we see oftentimes in family profiles. It's embryos, just EMBRYOS, no apostrophe. So something to keep in mind. Fourth, have a trusted person read it and make suggestions. This is a little different than spell check. Your trusted person can offer suggestions that have to do with spelling and grammar as well, of course, but they also can say, hey, you've run so many marathons. Why didn't you talk about that? Or, I know what you're trying to say here, but it doesn't come across that way. Something like that. You want to have someone who knows you and who you trust read it and give you their honest opinion. And lastly, this is my biggest tip. It's all about connecting with the right family, not every family. Maybe you're a fitness junkie and you work out 6 days a week, you eat all organic, you're super healthy, but you're nervous to talk about that in your profile because what if other families aren't like that and you don't want to scare them away? Don't be scared of that because the right family will love that. And the flip side is also true. Maybe the outdoors is not for you. You want to stay home, cuddle up with a book or a movie or a game. Talk about that. You don't need to pretend like you're into something you're not to get families to like you. Because at the end of the day, we're looking for the right match, the best match for you, not every single family available. So remember, it's about connecting with the right family, not every family. This is an exciting part of the process. Writing your family profile often happens right before you enter into matching, but it can also feel overwhelming. Reach out if you need help or another set of eyes. We're on your team. We've read a lot of family profiles. We're what you could call experts in them. So if you want our advice, just let us know. Right now, I'm the adopting family coordinator, so feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to offer my feedback or just give you the thumbs up to move forward. So don't hesitate to reach out. In review, your family profile is how placing families will have the opportunity to get to know you. We want it to reflect the real you, the honest you. If you're having troubles getting started, reach out. We can send you some more information. We can send you that checklist of things to include. So feel free to give us a call. The phone number's on the screen, or send us an email. We're happy to chat. Good luck writing your family profile, and we hope you get matched soon.